Welcome to the Newtown Big Dreams podcast, an interview-style talk show that's your gateway to the fabulous and fascinating people who relocated to start a new life. Whether you're new to our podcast or your city, our fellow neighbors from across Canada, North America, and the entire English-speaking world share their stories of reaching new horizons and big dreams. So sit back and relax as we navigate in-depth and intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, executives, creatives, and anyone who can share their story about their Newtown big dreams. And now, here's your host, Luke J. Menkes.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm here today with Michelle Bulriss, and she's coming to us from Tempe, Arizona. She's written a book for kids, and we're going to talk all about that. First, a little bit about Michelle. She is extremely passionate about learning, about nonprofits, and about working with children. During her undergraduate studies, Michelle ran 2 nonprofit organizations, one for fair trade arts and one for recycling. And she also held 5 jobs and an internship at a human trafficking protection law firm project while in college. And she graduated early, and after that, she obtained her master's degree in nonprofit leadership and management. And Michelle tells us it hasn't always been smooth sailing. She is a survivor of abuse, rape, and now, understandably, she suffers from PTSD. And what she's done is she's used these experiences to grow stronger. And she is now an activist who works hard to create a better future for children everywhere. So she's become an expert in early childhood education. And she owns a business that is focused on helping children learn empathy. And she does everything she can to help others, which is wonderful. So I guess my first question, Michelle, is that kids who have been abused have a hard time with the empathy human skill. Is that right?
It can be, yes.
It'd be really hard to relate to people. And maybe let's get into that a little bit, if you don't mind, just about what effect abuse has on children.
So it can kind of go one of 2 ways. Sometimes abuse and trauma will open a person up to be more empathetic because they've experienced more painful things and can thus relate to other people's experiences. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it also shuts down a child's kind of emotional processes, mm-hmm. and they don't take everything in their environment the same way that somebody who hasn't been through trauma or abuse would. Right. So there's a lot of really big issues with that. For one, people who have been abused and have had trauma are more likely to experience it again. Mm-hmm. And there are a few reasons. There's a few reasons for that. So for one, psychologically, you're conditioned into a pattern. And once you've been conditioned to that pattern, you will subconsciously, so you're not aware that you're doing this, but you will seek out people who are similar to the people who have hurt you in the past. Right. Because your brain says, this is what I'm used to, this is the norm. This is what I deserve, because you've been conditioned into that belief. Another thing is that, like a wounded animal, people, when they've experienced trauma, give off a certain energy and certain signals, both physical and audible. There are lots of little tics that these people, such as myself, have gained. And people who are looking to exploit others are experts at picking up these signals. So they're able to more easily tell this person is vulnerable and I'm going to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. How prevalent of a problem is this? So you've studied this after you've escape those situations. How prevalent is it? How common is it?
It's a lot more common than you would think. I I initially started looking into more of these issues because I was working with human trafficking victims, and that kind of opened me up to a whole other portion of the world and what's going on. It helped me to learn more about what puts kids at risk.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the foster system is awful. It is a breeding ground for trauma, uh, unfortunately, which is really heartbreaking because those are the kids that need it the most, that
Mm-hmm.
really need that help and support and love. But right now, our system is flawed, and we need to work to fix that.
Yeah.
Um, so,
So no problem. So it seems to me, just from reports I've read and studies I've read, that there's some bad people within the system. So the system is there supposedly to help trafficking victims and to help children. And there are predators within that system that kind of infiltrate the system and take advantage.
yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who seek out uh, different careers, different life paths that lead to giving them access to people who are vulnerable when
Mm-hmm.
they're searching for that. So uh, there's a reason why unfortunately, a lot of child predators will work with children. It's
Mm-hmm.
because they seek out ways to have that. And a lot of people in the foster care system, some of them need the financial support. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just an extra paycheck to them. Um, some of them have experienced abuse themselves and don't realize that they're perpetuating the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are really wonderful, honest people. But there are a lot of situations that aren't as clear as that. And there aren't enough homes either way.
Mm-hmm.
So we get desperate and we have to allow these places that are more dangerous to accept children because there are so many children without homes and there aren't enough homes offering.
Yeah. How does the trafficking start? Are these children who are kidnapped or orphaned because of accidents, or where do these people come from? The
So
victims.
there are a lot of ways to get into human trafficking. People don't realize that it's not a problem where you get kidnapped and taken overseas. Sometimes it's in your backyard and you don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there was a really powerful woman who I had the privilege of speaking with who uh, told me about her experiences in the human trafficking system. And she was drugged and then sexually abused by a classmate who recorded it and then used it to blackmail her because she came from a very strong Catholic family.
Mm-hmm.
And that pressure, and because they knew they learned everything about her life, they managed to get her deeper and deeper into it until the point where when she was trying to get out, they kidnapped and killed her dog. She was raped by many men. There was a point where she was she woke up naked a few days later in a hotel, totally completely battered, and she couldn't even remember everything that happened to her and had to find a way to get home. The only reason that she was able to escape was because her family moved unexpectedly, and she didn't have to deal with the same area because they didn't come find her.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
but there
so
are
she was too
people.
ashamed to even tell her family what was happening.
It started out with her thinking it was her fault because she was no longer pure, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, in her mind. And eventually it became threats. So they killed her dog and they threatened her little brother and lots of stuff like that. So she was worried about her family being hurt if she told anyone.
Yeah. How did you find out about that case, and how do cases like this come to light when the person is so ashamed they don't want to get help, but eventually they do, or someone catches someone doing something?
So this particular woman didn't come out and say anything about it until she was an adult,
Mm-hmm.
many years later. And she didn't tell her parents. The way that they found out was that she wrote a book about her experiences. And that was how they found out what happened to her.
Wow.
Because although there are signs, if you're looking, most people don't look.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there are there's a lot of underground systems that are based on wealth and power.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of people fall victim to that.
Mm-hmm.
But the people in power and with the wealth are able to hide these things because they're able to pay people off or threaten them. There are lots of different reasons why things happen, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more human trafficking in the United States than people would think.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it's a terrible system because people get into power because they're blackmailed quite often, or if there's a good person in power, they can be threatened or bribed. So it's a really difficult situation. How do we solve this problem? Like how do people get caught when you have this system that kind of seems to work against the victims in many cases?
It does. It really does. One of my proudest accomplishments was helping to write and edit a law that was passed in Ohio that helped victims of human trafficking so they weren't being charged with crimes um, that they were only committing because they were trafficked and they were forced into them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's a big step. We need to go over our legal system and make sure that we're not punishing the victim for things they can't control. Just in the United States, there's more than 400,000 children who are fostered. And that's probably increased now. That's the last time that I was able to get the statistic.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of cases, uh, they are, they say that it's only about 10 out of every 1,000 children who were about victims of abuse and neglect. But it's a lot higher than that because the majority don't come forward about it. So one of my big goals is to work on promoting empathy and communication about emotional intelligence and more intense feelings that most people don't talk about because these are the things that give us warning signs. If we are more open about what we're experiencing and if we share what makes us vulnerable, together we can make each other stronger.
So how can those of us recognize someone who's a victim and maybe help them? Like, is it a good percentage of people in foster care? Like, we don't want to be suspicious of everyone who's in foster care, I don't think, but like how do we
Definitely
identify
not.
and help these people?
So there are some general warning signs that are always good to look for. One is depression, anxiety in certain situations can be a sign. Rapid change in academic performance or in appetite
Mm-hmm.
uh, can be warning signs because some people eat to cope with it and other people don't have access to food. So they are malnourished or they are too stressed to eat. People, especially in kids that want to stay at school more than go home, that can sometimes be a sign. Not saying that every kid that loves school is going to be going through these things, but when they are consistently worried about going home and they want to stay at school and in activities and things that keep them away from the home, that's a good warning sign. There are certain places where statistically it is more likely for somebody to be trafficked or to have something like this happen to them. So one place that is a big issue are truck stops.
Wow.
A lot of people are taken from rest stops. They're generally not well lit enough. They don't have enough security, and there are a lot of transients and people who don't have access to resources to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So it could be a transient person or it could be a young person with their family and just going to use the facilities and kidnapped. Is that?
it could be anyone. It's more likely to happen to people who are alone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always good to have a buddy. Um, it's also good to have check-ins with people in
Mm-hmm.
certain areas. There are certain cities where it's more prevalent than others. Football games, like the Super Bowl, is a huge one. There are a lot of people who are trafficked at the Super Bowl every year, and people don't realize it.
I've heard that. So people, these predators will communicate with each other. And I understand they actually buy and sell people.
Yeah, sometimes it's through the dark web. They have auctions and such. But sometimes it's a way that if you know someone, they'll get you into the club, and then you'll only have access by who you know.
Yep.
But they generally find ways to make it so that way everyone has a lot to lose if they're caught.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to generally people who are traffickers and who participate in the system, they have a lot on the line too if they get caught. So they're very tight about security and who has access. So it'll be they'll change the website every single time they meet, or they will change the location and never use real names and stuff like that. Use different computer software to change the IP locations and everything. So that way they're a lot more difficult to track. And there are also other countries where laws are lax about some of those things, or where certain cultural aspects don't allow for justice systems to really help those who are being uh, abused by this system.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge challenge, and I encourage everybody to look into this because I think, like you said, it's way worse than people imagine. A lot of it's hidden, and we don't hear about it unless it affects someone close to us, like a relative or a friend. We probably not going to hear about it too often unless there's a major arrest. I've heard recently there's been some pretty big arrests and some children rescued. Do you see any signs that this situation is getting better, or is it just, coping the best we can with the situation?
Honestly, it's kind of a combination of the two. We have a lot more nonprofits and a lot more organizations that are actively working to increase awareness. We are also doing a lot to try to reevaluate certain social systems.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit more difficult right now, especially with everything concerning COVID, because it's put a lot of people out of work and out of home.
Mm-hmm.
And they are a lot more vulnerable to being trafficked because
Yeah.
of things. I would recommend very strongly to if you're interested in the topic, or if you want to better understand how close you could be to something like this, I would recommend reading The Slave Across the Street.
Okay.
It's by Teresa Flores.
Okay.
She's the woman who I was able to meet with, who uh, shares her story about how she was enslaved and only escaped by moving.
Right.
If I remember correctly, I think she was 15 when it started.
Wow. Do
Uh,
you know how her parents reacted when they saw the book?
I know it was really hard for them, and that there was some disbelief at first. But from what I remember, because this was years ago that I was able to meet with her, from what I remember, they were more supportive than she was expecting.
Mhm.
But it's really hard for parents, guardians, people who have a vested responsibility in a child to hear that something like this could have happened while it was their responsibility to take care of this child. And so the gut reaction for a lot of people is denial, because they don't want to accept that this kind of a thing could have happened. Um, I know in my particular case, for the most part, I got pretty lucky with people uh, trying to understand what I experienced rather than denying its existence. But I personally have experienced people who've told me that didn't happen. There's no
Yeah.
way that could have happened, or they're too nice of a person. They wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty painful to hear something like that, for sure. Well, Michelle, who inspires you, and who do you aspire to be like?
I have a lot of inspirations. Just this morning, I was attending a live conference hosted by JP Morgan Chase,
Mm-hmm.
and they had uh, this amazing speaker. She's from France and is a minister there, who works on equality and inclusiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked a lot about the different things that need to happen for us to get to a society where we have equality and fairness.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually addressed some things that I was really surprised to hear, but really happy to hear. For one, oh, I was right. It was Moreno,
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Moreno. I double checked, but she is specifically the delegate for gender equality, diversity, and equal opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And her explanation of where things are at and what needs to happen to push us ahead was really well done, specifically because today is International Women's Day.
Right.
It was a little bit more focused on gender equality,
Mm-hmm.
but they were talking about different diversity statistics and the quotas that a lot of businesses and schools and governments mandate now, or are considering mandating.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about her initial response to that as a child and how she changed her views on it as she became an adult and witnessed the system and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but part of it was that you, as a child, want to be recognized for your abilities, your talents, your skills, who you are as a person. You don't want to be a part of a quota.
Right.
We're working towards making things better, but I think a big part of it is accepting where we're at as a society, because I think that we in America want to think that we are better, stronger, more sophisticated than what we really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what would you say that you're most passionate about, and why?
Helping people, uh, animals too, really every living creature I like helping.
Mm-hmm.
I'm extremely passionate about children. They light up my life. I I originally wanted to be a teacher when I was growing up because I love learning and I love helping others to grow as people.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got pushed away from that as a kid because my parents were both teachers and they were worried about me having a sustainable lifestyle on a
Right.
teacher's salary and everything. But I kind of fell into it on accident, uh,
Mm-hmm.
just in a random position, and realized that it was one of my callings.
Mm-hmm.
And the the experience of watching a child grow and have that spark where they are able to recognize and understand something that they didn't originally understand is just magical.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what pushed me into what I'm doing now as an author and a business owner, was because I wanted to have that impact, but on a much larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was working one classroom at a time. Uh, I've worked with K through eighth grade, and I've also worked with college students. I'm still working with college students, uh, but it was still just one classroom at a time. And I realized that I could make a bigger impact if I was able to spread my message and communicate things that are important to children in a way where they're able to communicate more openly.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about your business.
My business is based off of my book. So first
Okay.
came the book, and I realized that I wanted to make a larger impact with it because everything kind of fell into place for it. I've been wanting to write and publish books since I was a kid, and I've had this idea for a children's book for a long time, and it was only after I experienced all of my trauma and the start of my recovery that I finally got the courage to go for it. And I had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely no idea. I've never written a book, I've never illustrated a book.
Right.
I just kind of jumped into it. Nobody gave me instructions. I didn't read any how-to guides. I just kind of created a document on my computer and was like, okay, I'm going to start doing stuff with this now.
Right.
And it turned out to be really beautiful, and it's been helping a lot of people so far. And once I recognized its potential, by speaking with different educators, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, parents, different people who work with children, once I was able to get their feedback on it, it opened up my eyes to how much it could help people. And so I decided to make a business from it. So my business is the same thing as my book. It's called Lobsters. And it's basically, it's centered around promoting empathy in children. But it's going to, under the umbrella of my business is my book series that I'm working on. So Sock Lobsters was the very first one, and there will be more. I am working on more. Already have ideas for the third book. Second book is in process. Slower than I'd like to because I'm a crazy person and I work 4 jobs at a time and have a puppy and crazy stuff in my life. But the goal is to communicate different different messages and lessons through each book. So the first one focuses on loss and the grieving process and those complex emotions that are associated with it. So it actually covers denial, depression, all of those complicated things that most parents and adults don't communicate to children. And in a period of time where we're losing people left and right due to COVID, it's extremely important to make sure that we're communicating what these feelings are, because children experience them too. And even if they're not experiencing them the same way, they understand and pick up on a lot more than we give them credit for. So if they see you experiencing these things, they'll be confused. Anger is a large part of grief. And sometimes people will take it out on others, including children, and they don't know why. They should be able to understand that it's not always about you specifically. Sometimes somebody's hurting, so they hurt others unintentionally. Hurt people hurt people.
Right.
So communicating these things on a much larger scale at a much younger age helps children to ingrain and develop processes where they're able to stop for a moment and think about how their actions or how the actions of others are impacting the world around them.
How did you come up with the name Sock Lobsters?
Okay, so this was just me being quirky and weird. I know that this has been a super serious talk so far, but I'm a very quirky person, and I like to write songs and random things. And I was at a restaurant with my boyfriend at the time, and Rock Lobsters came on the radio, B-52s, for anyone that knows them. And don't ask me why, but I thought it would be funny if I made a parody of it. So I called my parody Sock Lobsters.
Right.
And it was really lame. It was like the beginning part was, I was at a laundromat. Everyone was washing their socks, but they weren't their socks. They were sock lobsters. And it was a whole thing. I almost recorded the cover of it too, but the instrumental part got too difficult, so I gave up on it, and then realized later on that it would be a really good idea for a children's book because it's weird enough that nobody else would really think of it. And it also has different aspects that are really great for communicating issues like this. I know that a lot of therapists will use puppets, sock puppets and such,
Yes.
to try and communicate more complex and difficult topics with children. So the aspect of a living lobster sock
Right.
is, it's fun and interesting and takes away from some of the more difficult parts of what it's trying to communicate.
Right. So this is a book that is designed to help children to learn empathy, and so they can grow into kind and mindful and loving adults. And then
Yes.
you use these concepts to help, like child therapists, psychologists, teachers, parents. Do you go and give speeches, or how do you get the message out to, for example, child therapists?
So right now, I've been working a lot more through word of mouth and reaching out to different organizations. One of the options on my website is actually to donate the book. So you can buy the book, but actually you would be donating it somewhere. And you can specify where you'd like it donated, or I can pick. And some of the places that I pick are different nonprofits that work with children, or therapist's office, places where I know that they will be of use and actually be able to help people who need it. Or some of them I've donated to families who I know are in the process of grief because they've lost a loved one and they need a way to communicate that to the children.
Yeah.
And it facilitates these conversations in a way that they can understand without taking them to too dark of a place. It has a happy ending.
Okay.
So it's still a happy, cute little book, but it allows for those conversations and to promote an open forum between children and adults.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's awesome. We'll definitely put a link to the book and information about what you do right in the show notes. So if someone's out for a walk or they're on the treadmill, they don't have to write anything down. They just tap on it and it takes them directly there. So
Please
pretty
don't.
great.
That's dangerous.
Right. Don't try to write or type things in your note app while you're doing something else. It's not good. So a couple of fun questions, Michelle. What is the weirdest scar you have, and how did you get it?
That's a good question. Okay, so I have a few weird scars, but the first one that it's kind of between two weird ones. I have one that's like stitches on the bottom of my chin. You can see it because we're doing a video right now, but obviously the listeners can't. And then there's one that you won't be able to see, but it is on my eyelid, like right above my lash line. And it's quite the story. So, being a child and not quite thinking about my surroundings as much as I should have, when I was really young, I don't know, probably 5 or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how old I was. I walked in front of a swing set and got hit in the face, in the eye, and it split open.
Was it a boot or a shoe? Or
So it was actually this weird little swing that was basically a little platform with two benches on it.
Oh, yeah.
And the benches like swung back and forth so two people could swing at the same time facing each other. It was really cool, but dangerous.
It's in the wrong spot.
Yeah, so it split open my eyelid. Lots of blood. I'm freaking out. And we get to the emergency room, and I think that this was probably one of the first experiences where I've really seen my father truly angry, really, truly scary mad. Because when they were trying to do it, they realized that it was too close to my eye to do stitches. So they had to use this medical grade glue. And the doctor glued himself to my face.
Oh, my God.
So there I was with the doctor stuck on my face. And my dad was not happy about it.
Oh, my God.
Personally, I thought it was kind of funny.
At the time?
But
was it very painful or just more freaking out because of the blood?
It was painful. It was definitely painful.
But that would have been pretty funny to have some strange adult stuck to your face.
It was a distraction from the pain. You know, my eyes all swollen. I'm super covered with tears and blood and everything. But it was something where it was like, wait, what is happening? Aren't you supposed to be the professional? Why is this what happened?
Which?
Yeah, it was his hand.
His hand was stuck to your
face. Yeah, his hand was stuck to my face.
So how did they solve that? I mean, how do you separate that?
Honestly, I don't really remember much after that. I remember my dad getting really mad.
Right.
And somehow, pretty quickly after that, I was no longer attached to the doctor.
Right. It must
once my dad got mad, it was kind of like okay, we got to get this off right now. They fixed the problem. But I've had a lot of weird scars and weird injuries. Like, I've been attacked by spider monkeys before.
Wow. In
Mexico. They tried to kidnap me as a kid because they liked me too much. Like, not as in they were trying to hurt me, but I was feeding them, and at first it was all great, and then I turned around to have my parents take a picture, and then they grabbed me by the hair and tried to steal me. So, yeah, I've had some weird experiences in my life.
Sounds like it. So what is the weirdest thing that you've ever eaten?
Scorpion.
Was that on purpose or was that intentional?
I don't know why, but thinking about that being on accident is kind of funny.
In Toronto, where I grew up, we have these restaurants. They're called dim sum. So it's authentic Chinese food. And apparently there's some stuff in there that I would not want to eat. But sometimes the translation is not very good. So there's like tongue. There's even eyeballs of certain creatures
stomach,
and things like that.
All that kind of stuff.
And so sometimes people do eat things and they don't really realize it until they've eaten it.
For me, it was, I knew what I was doing. And it was kind of a challenge to myself. I have a phobia of scorpions. They terrify me. Mm-hmm. In the majority of situations, I'm the kind of person that throws myself in front of others instinctually, just because I've been in enough situations to know that that's my instinct. But scorpions, oh no. I run and hide. I make somebody else go kill it. I can't handle it. They freak me out so bad. So when I was in China, I used to be in an international touring choir. So I've sung all over the world. I've sung in the Vatican, Russia. And when I was singing in China, I was with the professional touring choir I was in, and we were going through the markets, and they had fried scorpions on a stick. And it was really uncomfortable to watch because they would fry the scorpions while they were alive. So they were moving.
Mm.
And one of my friends, being the daredevil that she was, decided to buy some scorpions on a stick. And as a challenge to myself and my bravery, I tried a little bit of their legs. I couldn't get too close to the body. The tail freaks me out, the eyes, I couldn't handle it. So I just broke off some legs and ate them. And it tasted kind of like potato chips and chicken.
That is crazy. So don't they have a hard shell? It's like, yeah. So you're just kind of digging the body out. Is that how people eat them? They cook this thing.
No, they straight up eat them.
They just straight up scrape it out of the shell.
No, like
they eat the
I
shell
bite
too?
through the shell. Yeah.
Wow. I'm not sure
Gross,
I could do
right?
that. That is very brave of you. And of course, it's not moving anymore by the time you're eating it. It's been cooked and sauteed.
I refused to go near the ones that were still moving. So, no. I also think that it is incredibly cruel to eat something that's alive. I know that there are some cultural practices. Specifically, there's one where they will like cut open a monkey's head and eat its brain while it's still alive.
Mm.
And the thought of that gives me nightmares. I can't imagine doing that to a creature while it's still alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a pescatarian, so I don't even really eat meat most of the time, and I only eat fish. And I still just I can't imagine doing that. That seems unreasonably cruel. If I was a cannibal, I wouldn't just go up to someone and start gnawing on their arm.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty amazing some of the things that humans can do. Really.
Do you want to know a really, really weird fun fact?
Yes.
So there has been research done to see what meat is the closest to human flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what it is?
What?
Spam.
Really?
Yeah. Spam tastes the closest to human flesh. I don't know why they know that or how they studied it, but I know it has been studied, and that was the result.
Wow. Yeah, spam is one of those things that I don't really trust. I don't trust any meat that I can't identify. So
right, like with hot dogs, you don't really understand what's in it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I do eat hot dogs very rarely, but I think they're just the inner parts of a pig. What I understand, but spam, I think, is a different level of weird. We don't really know what's in it.
It's just a can of weird meat.
Yeah.
It could be human meat for all we know.
Yeah.
Okay, I take that back. That'll probably give some poor kid nightmares if they hear this. That's not what's happening. We're not eating people for real.
Yeah. Yeah. Spam, no. It's definitely on my do not eat list for sure. So, Michelle, I want to really thank you for your time. I know it's not difficult talking about some of those topics. I think it's important, that people are aware and that we can, each of us, do our little part to, hopefully minimize this and one day, hopefully eradicate it from the planet, because it's truly horrific what happens to people. And especially innocent kids who don't even know what's happening when it's happening. So I want to thank you for the work that you do and for being so open about it.
I do think that they're not all negatives, that we do have to look on the bright side, because it will be very difficult to get to the point where we're able to eliminate issues completely. But I think that if we recognize how much we grow as people and as individuals, and show how strong we really are, we're able to learn a lot. And I know a lot of people who have become the amazing people that they are because of some of the things that they've been through.
Yeah. Very true.
So it's all a part of life's journey sometimes.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Very true. Positive way to look at it. So, Michelle, people can get your book and find out more at socklobsters.com. And like I said, we'll put the link right into the show notes so people don't need to write it down. But it's been really great talking to you and hearing some of your experiences and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast with your host, Luke Menkes, and his authentic guests. And we love our listeners and hope you subscribe now to learn more about the amazing journeys of our incredible guests who relocated to find a new town, big dreams. And remember, make your dreams big.